On May 26, 1991, two police officers were parked on North 25th Street in Milwaukee after just finishing their shifts. They noticed a 14-year-old boy running up an alley near the street. The officers approached him to check on the situation. When they asked the boy what was going on, he barely responded in broken English, saying he was Asian, from Laos. At that moment, another man approached and said, "Sorry, officer, this is my friend. We just had a little too much to drink in my apartment, and then he ran out." The officers asked how old the boy was, and the man claimed he was 19. However, one of the officers became suspicious because the boy looked terrified. To ensure everything was all right, the officers decided to check the apartment. Upon entering, they noticed a few strange items inside: hammer, saw, drill, rope, and a pair of handcuffs. However, everything else seemed normal. A simple one-bedroom apartment with a kitchen and living room. The apartment was clean, and nothing appeared overly suspicious. Thinking it might have been a mistake in their perception, and with no clear evidence of wrongdoing, they allowed the boy to remain with the man. It wasn't until later that the officers realized they had simply handed the teenage boy into the hands of America's infamous serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer.
I don't know, I went to great lengths.
He is pure evil, but you'd never know it by looking at him. But when you hear him, that's another story.
Jeffrey Dahmer had etched his name in history as one of the world's most evil killers.
The 1970s and 1980s were an era of serial killers in the U.S. Joseph James DeAngelo, Lynn Rader, Rodney Alcala, and Ted Bundy. However, among them, one stands out: Jeffrey Dahmer. He was friendly, charming, and fun to talk to. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 21, 1960. From an early age, Jeffrey didn't receive much attention from his parents. His father, an analytical chemist, was always absorbed in work, and his mother struggled with neurotic behavior. Despite these challenges, Jeffrey seemed like an intelligent, normal kid who got along well with his friends. But as time went on, things took a darker turn. While still in high school, Jeffrey became an alcoholic and started engaging in strange behavior. When he went fishing, he wasn't just catching fish. He was more interested in what was inside. He would cut them open to examine them, and later, he began doing the same to other animals and insects, sometimes even torturing them.
It was just mystifying to me how the insides of the animal looked. There was a sort of general excitement for me. I don't know why.
At 18, after his parents divorced, Jeffrey was left alone, and that's when things got worse. His obsession with animals began to shift toward humans. On June 18, 1978, while driving his father's '77 Cutlass Supreme, he saw a 19-year-old hitchhiker who was on his way to Lockwood Corners, Ohio, to attend a concert. Jeffrey pulled over, picked him up, and invited him back to his house for drinks. They ended up in his parents' basement, where Dahmer killed his very first victim, Stephen Hicks. Now that Dahmer knew he was capable of taking a life, he was willing to commit murder again. However, he needed a more secure place to do so. His parents' house wasn't an option, as his father would eventually find out. Because of this, Jeffrey wouldn't kill again for a while. His father later sent him to serve in the U.S. Army in Germany, where Dahmer attempted to kill soldiers, but he always missed his chance. Struggling with heavy drinking, he was eventually discharged from the Army. In 1987, his father and stepmother sent him to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to live with his grandmother, hoping he could start a new life. 9 years had passed since his first murder, but Dahmer was now ready to kill again. Dahmer's victims were always young men. He'd meet them on the streets, in shops, or at bars, chatting them up and offering money to pose at his place for fashion photos or whatever he could come up with. Once he got them back to his apartment, he'd give them a drink spiked with drugs to knock them out, and then he'd strangle them to death. Every month, more and more people disappeared, and the police grew desperate with no clue how they were going missing. Dahmer knew exactly how to avoid leaving evidence. He'd ask questions like, "Are you alone?" Or, "Do you have family?" And, "Are you close to them?" If they said they were alone and had no close family, they became the perfect target. Dahmer specifically chose victims who wouldn't be missed, knowing the police wouldn't pay as much attention. After already killing his fourth victim, in August 1988, Dahmer made a crucial mistake. He left a witness. Somsak's synthesophone, a 14-year-old boy, was at the bus stop when a man approached him, introducing himself as a photographer. He offered Somsak money to pose for photos at his house. Although Somsak felt nervous and hesitant since he didn't know the man, his family, Laotian immigrants, was struggling financially, so he agreed anyway. Dahmer took him home, took a few photos, and gave him a drink laced with drugs. However, Dahmer passed out early, allowing Somsak to escape and go straight to the police. On September 27, 1988, Dahmer was arrested for assaulting a minor and luring them under false pretenses. Although he was sentenced to 1 year in prison with work release and 5 years of probation, Dahmer spent only a week in jail before being released on bail. After Dahmer was released, he moved from his grandmother's house to his own apartment, Flat 213 at the Oxford Apartments. It was after this that his killings escalated. Dahmer picked up right where he left off, and for years he got away with murder. No one suspected the mild-mannered, good-looking boy of any further wrongdoing. Families were reporting their sons missing, but the police couldn't find the bodies. However, on May 26, 1991, Dahmer came agonizingly close to being caught after an encounter with a 14-year-old. Konorak, a teenage boy living near Jeffrey Dahmer in Milwaukee with his immigrant family, was at the mall when Dahmer approached him, using a familiar tactic, promising money in exchange for photographs. He lured the boy back to his apartment. When Konorak arrived at the apartment, Dahmer drugged the 14-year-old and began to torture him. While Konorak was passed out, Dahmer went out to get some beer. By the time Dahmer returned, Konorak had managed to briefly escape from the apartment, running away naked and bleeding. Two women, one of them Dahmer's neighbor, Glenda Cleveland, saw the incoherent boy on the sidewalk and called the police. When Dahmer arrived, he saw two police officers, John Balcerzak and his partner, questioning the boy. However, after Dahmer insisted that Konorak was his drunk 19-year-old friend, the officers grabbed Konorak by each arm and escorted him back to Dahmer's apartment. With no clear evidence against him, the officers allowed the boy to stay with the serial killer. As soon as they left, Dahmer injected him and claimed his 13th victim just 10 minutes later. Konorak synthesophone, who is Somsak's younger brother. If the story had only ended there. By July 1991, Dahmer's desire to kill had become insatiable. In just 16 days, he murdered 4 more men, bringing his total number of victims to 17. It was the afternoon of July 22nd when Dahmer headed to Grand Avenue Mall in downtown Wisconsin to hunt again. As he was walking by, he spotted 3 men, one of whom was 32-year-old Tracy Edwards. After a few minutes, Dahmer approached them, introducing himself as Jeff. He said he was visiting from Chicago, taking care of his sick grandmother in West Allis, and claimed to be a professional photographer who paid people for pictures. He offered them $100, and the offer sounded good to them, so they agreed to go along. Afterward, they headed to a liquor store where Dahmer bought some beer. He then took Tracy Edwards to his apartment, giving the other two men a fake address to meet them later. Once they were in the room, everything seemed normal. Dahmer was talking and chatting like a friendly conversationalist. He offered Tracy a beer, but then suddenly changed the mood. He turned on the TV and played a movie called The Exorcist.
In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, it is He who commands you. He who plunges from the heights of heaven to the depths of hell. Be gone, Jim Garris, from this creature.
As Tracy turned his head to the screen, Dahmer quickly put a handcuff on him and pulled out a knife. Dahmer told Tracy to follow his orders, warning him that this night would be his last if he didn't comply. Tracy, trying to survive, obeyed Dahmer's demands and attempted to keep him calm by telling him they were friends and that there was no need for violence. For hours, Tracy fought for his life, trying to gain Dahmer's trust. At one point, he asked if he could go to the bathroom by himself. When he stood up, Tracy seized the opportunity and punched Dahmer in the face, then ran out of the apartment with the handcuffs still on. Tracy went straight to the Milwaukee police, who followed him back to Dahmer's apartment and arrested him. With that, the killings of one of America's most infamous serial killers were finally brought to an end. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, totaling over 900 years in prison. One thing that made Jeffrey Dahmer's case stand out wasn't just his intelligence or his calm, likable personality. Unlike other serial killers, Dahmer genuinely apologized and didn't blame anyone but himself. In court, he apologized to the victims' families, his own family, and even the two officers who failed to stop him sooner.
Your Honor, it is over now. I take all the blame for what I did. I hurt many people. The judge in my earlier case tried to help me, and I refused his help, and he got hurt by what I did. I hurt those policemen in the Conorak matter, and I shall ever regret causing them to lose their jobs, and I hope and pray that they can get their jobs back because I know they did their best, and I just plain fooled them. For that, I am so sorry. I know I hurt my probation officer, who was really trying to help me. I am so sorry for that, and sorry for everyone else that I have hurt. I have hurt my mother and father and stepmother. I love them all so very much. I hope that they will find the same peace I am looking for.
Now we only ever saw one side of Dahmer, the side where he appeared normal. His victims, however, saw another side entirely, one with a different manner, speech, and appearance. They knew things about him that we will never know, and they took those truths with them to their graves.
The oldest sister of Errol Lindsay, whatever your name is, say, I'm mad. This is how you act when you are out of control. I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I hate you. I hate you. This is out of control. Don't fuck with me, Jeffrey. I'll kill you. Look at me, mother. I kill you.
So, Dahmer will be walking around freely after 900 years. But don't worry, he's not going to make it that far. In 1994, 2 years after his sentencing, Jeffrey Dahmer was beaten to death in prison by a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver. May all the victims rest in peace.